which hitters could be the best under the radar draft sleepers and help you win this year in fantasy baseball. Let's start with the guy who's not a household name yet, didn't even play in the majors last year, and that's because he's coming from Japan to the Boston Red Sox and could be slated to hit leadoff for them. Masataka Yoshida, not going to go for 30, 40 home runs. He's just not that type of hitter. But as you know, in the Japanese league, there's much more emphasis on contact, putting the ball in play. This is a guy who has experienced. He will hit for average, at least he has in Japan, a career 326 hitter, and he's somebody who can get on base at the top of the lineup. That's definitely promising. Not somebody young, still developing. He's 29 years old, comes with a wealth of experience. Boston, of course, paid up to get him. That tells you that they're going to give him every opportunity to shine in that lineup. Now, this Boston lineup isn't quite what it used to be, but you still have some big bats like Rafael Devers behind him. They got Justin Turner to hit cleanup, and the fact that he's at the top of the order means he should score a lot of runs. And even though we always look for those sexy categories like homers and steals, he's not going to get you too many. He should go double digits in terms of dingers, maybe 15. Upside, possibly 20. I doubt it, but you never know. This is a guy who's 5'8", 176, at least double digits, and not really a base stealer. But runs count just as much if you're in a roto league. That's kind of one of the more overlooked categories, and he should get them. And batting average is a lot harder to come by these days as well. So this is a guy who has legit 300 average upside. I like that you can get him in the later rounds as your third or fourth outfielder. Yoshida is definitely somebody I want a part of in most of my drafts. And then an outfielder who did come on last year, played about half the season, but I feel is still being undervalued is in Cleveland. That's Oscar Gonzalez. Somebody who was not a big name prospect coming in. He's a big guy. Don't get me wrong. He's about 6'4", 240. Very different from Yoshida, but Gonzalez is a big guy. Didn't hit for big power last year. What he did, kind of surprisingly, is he hit for a really good average. It seemed like he was getting on base almost every game. He was kind of a singles machine for a while. Now, he did go deep 11 times in 362 at-bats. Not too bad. If you prorate over a full season, he could go for 20 more. If he grows into his power and starts lifting the ball more, we could see upside for 25, maybe even more home runs. This is somebody who had a 93rd percentile expected batting average. So he wasn't just getting on base. The way he was hitting the ball says he deserved to be getting on base. He's going to hit in the middle of that Cleveland order. Very, very promising. His ADP right now in underdog, if you're talking about early underdog best ball draft, going around pick 142. I think that's a steal for somebody with his potential. Now let's move to the infield. I like a guy who has the ability to help in multiple categories. Oswald Peraza in New York. That's right, the Yankees have not been afraid to bring up their young players. Brought up a couple last year late, and they helped out, and now could be nailing down an everyday job. In just 49 at-bats late in the year, he hit 306. That's very encouraging for a young player to get on base that frequently. And he stole a couple of bases. This is a guy who does have very good speed, 90th percentile sprint speed, and so there could be potential for even more stolen bases. He does qualify in most leagues, at least, both second base and shortstop, which is a plus. Not necessarily a guy you want as your everyday shortstop, of course, but somebody who could fill in late if you're waiting on second base, or more ideally as your middle infielder spot. Excellent plate discipline already in just that short time. I know we're talking small samples, but a 5.3% K minus BB percentage, that's strikeouts minus walks, differential being closer, that's really good. He's not striking out a whole lot. He is getting on base and, of course, hitting for average. Now, the only downside right now, of course, he's going to be hitting lower in that order because the Yankees have enough bats. They don't need him to hit at the top of the lineup. But you never know. Look, it wouldn't totally surprise me if at some point, if Gleyber Torres does struggle, he's a guy who's been kind of hot and cold. If Torres goes through a slump, gets hurt, whatever happens, maybe they switch. Maybe you get the guy with a little bit more power and Torres move down in the order. Maybe Peraza finds his way hitting first or second. All right, that would lead to a whole lot of runs scored. That would be great. And then similar to Oscar Gonzalez, who I mentioned earlier, a guy that I picked up a lot mid-season in my fantasy baseball leagues was Juan Yepez of the St. Louis Cardinals. Also a franchise is not afraid to bring up their prospects. Didn't get a lot of fanfare. They have plenty of other guys in their farm system who've got a lot more attention. Yepez is somebody who kind of came to the limelight during the Arizona Fall League. He was ripping the ball up. He's somebody who has shown elite maximum exit velocity. When he gets a hold of the ball, he can crush it. He did come up last year and immediately was hot. First 2 months that he was in St. Louis, he hit 284, had 9 home runs and 24 RBIs. So he was actually playable in fantasy, and like I said, I had him in either the util or the corner infield spot for multiple leagues. Then he started to slow down a little bit and got hurt and barely played the rest of the way. So kind of wanted being droppable. A lot of people are going to forget about him, and you think, well, he might get replaced by this guy or the other. Look, this is a guy who's still just 24 years old, has that power that you want on a good team. He's going to get a chance to hold down the DH spot for the most part, and I think the upside is still there for maybe 25 to even 30 home runs, and he's shown that he can hit for average too, so he's not just going to be a one-trick pony. So don't give up on Yepez based on the way last season ended. Now let's move to catcher. Everybody wants to find that sleeper at catcher, so you don't have to pull the trigger early on your draft. How about a high-end prospect? No, I'm not talking about Adley Rutschman. That's a little too obvious. What about Shea Langoliers? Now in Oakland, a guy who was drafted by the Braves. He was the second catcher drafted a couple years ago behind Adley Rutschman. And catchers usually go very high, especially offensive-minded catchers who can provide help in both areas, defense and offense. He's one of the key pieces in the Matt Olson deal. That means that Langoliers now will have a chance to hold down the catcher spot on a near everyday basis. This is a guy who does have a developing bat, but of course all the tools that you would want in an offensive-minded catcher. He hit 6 home runs and 10 doubles in 142 at-bats last season. So you've seen some glimpses of the power already. Those doubles maybe start to convert slowly to home runs. Not the best park, definitely not the best offensive situation being in Oakland, but that is what also makes him a great sleeper and draft value, because not a lot of people are looking at Oakland for their fantasy offense. So Langoliers, a high-end prospect, somebody who you should definitely be interested in if you're waiting on catcher, or if, God forbid, you play in a 2-catcher league and you need somebody with some upside. And my last hitter sleeper I want to talk about is in Minnesota. Could be a DH, another former high-end draft pick, 5th overall, and he's got the bloodlines. The brother, of course, of D. Gordon. I'm talking about Nick Gordon. Now, he is not quite as fast as D was, and he is not necessarily the same type of hitter. He has more pop. He's somebody who's shown a pretty good balance between power and speed. Somebody who did have 14 expected home runs last year, but only wound up with 9. His expected stats, if you look at the StatCast numbers, are all pretty promising, and he underachieved a bit, but this is somebody who's now in his prime, age 27. He should have a chance to be pretty much in the everyday lineup for the Twins. I think he'll be, for the most part, DH there. He should still qualify both infield and outfield, at the very least one of those, so you don't have to clog your utility spot with him. Got a little bit of power, got a little bit of speed, got some good on-base skills. You put it all together. Somebody who is not necessarily going to jump out and be a star. I don't think he's going to have the upside of like a Royce Lewis, who is on that same team, but just needs to stay healthy. But Nick Gordon is somebody who in the later rounds could be a surprising sleeper. Those are some late-round picks who can help you out on offense. But if you want to know which hitters are going to break out in 2023, check out my hitter breakouts right here.